Hello, BookTube. Last week I ended on a bail. This week I bookend on bails. This is Weekly Reads. So, the first book I had to go at this weekend, and the first book I bailed on, is Gods of Shade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno-Garcia. This is a historical fantasy novel set in the Yucatan, primarily in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, but there is a quest that takes the main character, Cassiopeia Tun, throughout Mexico. Cassiopeia Tun is a young woman who is pretty much treated as the maid for her wealthier relatives, primarily her grandfather, until one day she discovers the secret of her grandfather's wealth, which is that he holds the corpse of a Mayan god captive in a chest. Cassiopeia frees the god, and this god forces her to accompany him or guide him on a quest to find the missing pieces of himself that his usurping brother had stolen alongside several allies. Following Cassiopeia is her jerk of a cousin who has entered into a similar deal with the god who's with Cassiopeia, the usurping twin brothers with the jerk cousin, and it goes from there. I only made it 40 pages into the story. I thought the writing was just terrible. Primarily the tone. There is much in the way of fairy tale in this story, and unfortunately modern fairy tale retellings or just constructed fairy tales or fairy tale style can lead to a very condescending narrative tone, which I cannot stand. Also, the novel is more than a bit YA in tone. And again, YA at its worst. Not that I'm all that well read with YA, but the YA that I've read does have on occasion a condescending narrative tone, which annoys me intensely. Again, I cannot stand condescending narrative tones, so I bailed. This is my third attempt at, I guess I ought to bring it back up. This is my third attempt at a novel by Sylvia Moreno-Garcia. I first tried her novel, Certain Dark Things, shortly after it came out. It's a contemporary urban fantasy set in Mexico City, in a Mexico City that either has become a city-state dominated by vampires, or the entirety of Mexico has been taken over by vampires. And I didn't particularly care for it. I made it a few chapters in and didn't like it. And then I also tried her debut, Sylvia Moreno-Garcia's debut, Signal to Noise, which is about two former school friends who reunite a decade or so later, and there's something to do with magic based around music, which again I didn't particularly care for, even though yes, I do have a copy of Signal to Noise in my collection. I'm hoping for a reread, so I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to return to Sylvia Moreno-Garcia, since this is my third strikeout with her. After I decided to bail on Gods of Jade and Shadow, I moved on to Scorpion by Louise M. Pryke. Scorpion is part of the animal series published by Reaction Books. Each book looks at the biology of the animal in question, as well as the animal's relationship to humans historically, artistically, and economically. And while the writing of Scorpion is okay, I did manage to read it in one day. I flew through this book. I did learn quite a bit. I learned that scorpions and scorpionology are in their infancy. The study of scorpions, not necessarily scorpions themselves. Scorpions are amongst the oldest of animals. I learned that they are incredibly hardy and tough. Scorpions are one of the few animals that can survive nuclear radiation. I also learned that scorpions' venom, or some species' venom, are medically interesting, particularly in regards to pain reduction and pain relief and cancer fighting. And the chapters on the scorpion's role in human history, human religion, was quite fascinating. Although there's some of the chapters I think probably could have been broken up. I think the prehistory of the scorpion, I think the evolutionary history, I think could have been its own chapter. And then the history of the scorpion, I mean, I can understand why the Mesopotamian and Mesoamerican parts of the history of the scorpion were together, because they really didn't, there wasn't enough for long chapters. They both would have been pretty short chapters, particularly compared to the Egyptian chapter. But I mean, that was a bit, I think my one problem with the book was the history could have been, I think, better organized. Although whether or not it could have been expanded is, I don't know. But anyway, I really enjoyed Scorpion, even though the writing wasn't necessarily spectacular, and the issue with some of the first chapters. But I definitely highly recommend this series. I'm looking forward to getting to the other two books I have, and maybe adding more of these to my collection. After I finished Scorpion, which was on Saturday, on Sunday I started Gather the Fortunes by Bryan Camp. This is a reread. It's the sequel to City Falls Fortunes. In this book, 5 years after the events of City Falls Fortunes, so this would be in 2016. Renaissance Rennie Raines is a psychopath. She is split between the living world and the underworld. Both halves of Rennie guide alongside her psychopomp mentor Sal, who takes the form of either a dog or a crow, guide the souls of the dead into the afterlife. The living Rennie, the Rennie in the living world, basically guides the souls through the living world up to the first gate, and then the underworld Rennie takes them the rest of the way. One day, both Rennies are approached by separate gods with the request of help, or the gods are asking for their help to pay particular attention to a specific individual who is about to die. And this person, a young man named Ramsay St. Cyr, is scheduled to die in a few days' time, and when the living Rennie goes to collecting, he's not there. He's missing, and this aberration creates a snowball effect that sees the universe threatened. And it's up to Rennie and her friends to stop this threat. I don't like this book nearly as much as I did City of Lost Fortunes. I think in part Jude Dubuisson, the main protagonist of City of Lost Fortunes, is sorely missed in this book. He does appear in 2 scenes, but they are incredibly short. And I really don't like Rennie's character. She was my least favorite of Jude's allies in City of Lost Fortunes, and her character is not... I don't like her character, or her characterization. I think in part it's one of those instances where Camp is trying to create a character who is fierce and kick-ass and socially aware, and just doesn't quite get it. Instead of being a fully fleshed out character, she becomes more of an archetype, and just so I didn't really care for Rennie's character, which is a bummer. The plot is incredibly well done, which I think is one of Bryan Kemp's strengths, is his plotting. The plots are rather complex, with various characters having their own agendas and trying to navigate. But I think this novel isn't nearly as complex, as well realized as City of Lost Fortunes. This one, very much, it's a more linear thread, although the main antagonist doesn't reveal herself until somewhat later in the book. But yeah, so it's a bit disappointing. I had this feeling the first time I read City of Gather the Fortunes that I really didn't like it as much as I did City of Lost Fortunes. Anyway, so moving on to the final book I read this week, and the one that I bailed on, or the second bail of the week, Fire to Fire, new and selected poems by Mark Doty. So I started the book, and I got about 40 pages in, and I didn't feel it. I don't know necessarily if it's me not liking the poems, or me just not being in the mood for poetry, or what. I remember liking Doty's work. I've read it before in an anthology, Word of Mouth, edited by Timothy Liu, and also I had his collection Source in my collection at one point. Which it's been like well over 10 years since I've read it, so. Anyways, I'm kind of disappointed with this. I'm probably going to come back to this at some point, but I don't know exactly when. I have other things I do want to read first, though. So, that was disappointment. So coming up this next reading week, I will be starting on, well, this coming reading week it's going to be a return to history. I'm going to start with Magic, a history from Alchemy to Witchcraft, from the Ice Age to the Present by Chris Gauston. I've been looking forward to this book ever since I first heard about it on Steve Donahue's channel well over a year ago. I had some concerns because I read a preview and there was a possibility this book was going to go in a bit of a woo-woo, for lack of a better word, direction, but I really wanted to read this, and I am definitely looking forward to reading it. And I will obviously be reporting back next Friday on how everything goes. And I'm also looking forward to reading Noble Ambitions, The Fall and Rise of the English Country House After World War II by Adrian Tinniswood. This is a history of the stately home after World War II, and I am really looking forward to this. So, cannot wait to get to it. Anyway, BookTube, that's what I've read and what I will be reading. So before I sign off, I'm going to do a quick sort of house cleaning and things. So I'm not going to be making any read-along adjacent videos for The Way We Live Now or Dune. Obviously, since I bailed on The Way We Live Now, I really have nothing to contribute to that discussion. Except to say that if only the story reflected the cover of Steve Donahue's ebook version, which I have got to know where he got that from. But anyway, and for Dune, yeah. So, yeah, so I'll not do any with that. I mean, I might pop in with a comment in, like, a video if I catch it from, like, Steve or Mayberry Book Club, but I doubt it. Particularly since the read-along videos are a bit more just plot synopsis than an analysis, which, no, not to dig either Steve or Mayberry Book Club, but yeah. Is there anything else? Oh yes. Yesterday in the nostalgia book tag, or the book nostalgia tag, I mentioned the cause for me doing that video, which was the Getty Museum has a exhibit or some kind, or I'm not entirely sure what it's relating to, but there's a short series on the Getty website's YouTube channel, well, the Getty Museum's YouTube channel, called Fantastic Journeys, Myth, Magic, and Mysterious Monsters. Although, when I mentioned yesterday and pull up the title, which I think I made the monsters Marvelous Monsters, which, to be honest, Miniamba is quite marvelous. But, anyway, so it's a series of 6 videos. 3 of them are stories told by different storytellers and using different means to animate the story. One is, and the one I'd watched before I made the video, was a watercolor animation, which was wonderful. And then this other 2, one was shadow puppets, which, again, amazingly well done. I love shadow puppets. And then the last one was black and white animation, which was wonderfully well done. Just amazing work. And then the other 3 videos in the series are craft projects that like you could do, or like do with your kids or something. One was making a moon mobile, which was just amazing. Another one was making shadow puppets. Again, really interesting. And then the third was making a collage of a monster. So I'm going to leave a link to the Getty Museum's YouTube channel again, just in case you're interested. So yeah. Also, obviously for the next month or so, I'm going to have some bags up here. Right now, that's my birthday present from my mom. Soon I'm going to add another one, which will be my present, my birthday present to my mom, because our birthdays are about 6 days apart. And then I'm also going to add my brother's birthday present from me and my mom up there too, because his birthday's like 10 days, slightly more than 10 days before mine. It's like we were all grouped together at the end of October and beginning of November. So yeah, so that's going to get a bit crowded, and we'll eventually cover up that painting, which was inspired by Karen Margulis, one of my favorite pastel artists. Which I guess I could leave a link to her channel too down below. Anyway, BookTube, next week, I don't know what I wanted to, I know there was something I wanted to do on Monday, but I forgot what it was, so maybe I'll remember, or if not, it wasn't important anyway. And then of course I'll do some tag videos, and of course weekly reads at the beginning of, or on Friday. So anyway, BookTube, until next Friday and next week, thank you, have a great evening and weekend, and stay safe.